Are you seriously fired up about growing as a leader in business or church-based ministry? Are you feeling somewhat frustrated about not having realized your full potential in what you've been called to do? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in an increased sense of clarity, direction, and purpose, dramatically increasing the results you achieve. If you're ready to step up, contact Errol to book a free, no-obligation, introductory coaching session and see whether Errol is the right coach for you. Errol takes the lessons learned from his own leadership journey and from his extensive research to help leaders and entrepreneurs to step into their biggest challenges and rise to their next level. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
Hello and welcome again to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. It's me, Errol Lawson, and our special guest today, again all the way from Orlando, Florida, is Greg Gorman. Greg and his wife are marriage counselors, family coaches, leadership consultants, authors, and they are making a huge difference all around the world. Greg, it's great to have you with us today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, man. It's my honor. Excited to be here.
We just grabbed the moment, and I guess tell us, first of all, Greg, give us fill in any gaps in your bio there for us and give us a glimpse of what you're up to in the world right now.
Oh, well, my best friend and business partner and wife is Julie Gorman, and unfortunately she wasn't able to be with us today, but Julie and I have been so blessed to travel and write. So we have 5 books that we've authored, and we get the privilege of going around to churches and all kinds of organizations and speaking to audiences about marriage and really how to live purpose-focused in our marriage rather than problem-focused. And of course, we have a private coaching practice as well where we help couples really discover their purpose for their marriage.
Okay.
God's created all of us with the desire to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, right? And so marriage offers us such a great opportunity to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, but sometimes we get so wrapped up in the busyness and all of the things that steal our energy in life that we forget that there's actually a bigger purpose at hand.
How did you transition? What were you doing before this ministry, and how did you transition into this ministry? Tell us that story.
That's a great question. So Julie and I, again, have been business partners for many years, and we have ran and owned and operated several different businesses. And we were in the life and health insurance industry for many, many years. We were wildly successful, did really, really well. And then God called us out of that industry, and he called Julie out first. And it was really funny because when she first got started, God's calling her into the work of an evangelist. And the funny thing is nobody else was calling her. So in other words, there was no audience. There wasn't any books that were written. There were no speaking engagements. So it was kind of a season of just baking and allowing God to do in her what he needed to do to build her to that point. And then after a couple of years went by, God really started speaking to me and called me out of that industry. And I went through actually a horrible, hard season searching for my purpose after that.
How old were you then?
I was in my early 40s.
Okay.
And so I left the business world where we had been wildly successful and highly sought after, and went into this time period of real obscurity. I went from being a rock star to being invisible.
Right.
And so it was a really, really difficult time. And so I remember one time Julie and I were having a conversation, and we'd, as I said, been successful in many businesses, but without the business forum, I kind of had no sense of purpose. And one of a couple of the questions that she asked me was, she says, well, what are you passionate about? What do you love? What do you really care about? And then she said, where's the fruit in your life come from? And what I realized, this is my wife asking me these questions. Yeah, so it was really a powerful time because, and I mention those not because I'm trying to really tell my stories, because if one of your listeners can ask themselves that question, here's the thing that we learned through that. God put our passions, our desires, our talents in us. Many times we look past them and we think that they're not sanctified enough or they're not holy enough to be used for God, right? When in fact they are begotten by Him and for a purpose, in fact. And so when we combined all that and then looked at the evidence of where the fruit in my life was, it became pretty evident that what I need to do is I certainly need to focus on leadership, because all the fruit in my life and the passion and the things that I love came back to leading people. I'm talented at it. I'm gifted at it. And that's not a braggadocious statement. It's a gift from God.
Absolutely.
So to draw a point to this and bring it to where we are today, what eventually happened is Julie and I really recognized that one of the greatest places that we naturally have influence is in our marriage relationship. People have always sought us out for parenting and marriage relationship. We do. We have 3. We have a 23-year-old who's married. She is living her purpose and leading worship on Sunday mornings in the church that she's at, and she's also a life coach. We have an 18-year-old who is going to college and is well on her way to living her purpose. She's more a studious one. And our 16-year-old son, who has a call to be a pastor, who is already speaking to sometimes 300 to 500 and sometimes 2,500 teens in a weekend service. That's great. So great stuff.
So on this journey of developing this ministry with your wife, was there a point where maybe you were heading in one direction in your leadership journey and something happened, a revelation, an aha moment, a transition point where it caused you to go in a completely different direction? Can you tell us that story?
Well, these are great questions. So what comes to mind when you ask that question, Errol, is there was a season when Julie was working in ministry, and she was growing the ministry business in the arena of ministering to women specifically. So she was doing a lot of marriage conferences and things of that nature. Okay. And I was still working in the business world. So we owned a couple of businesses and still own one of those businesses today. And then I was doing a lot of coaching in the business arena of leadership and just principles of success, for building culture and getting the team on the same page, all pulling in the same direction together instead of against one another, and really felt led that it was time for us to begin to join our worlds together again, but we didn't know what that looked like. So I'm successful coaching in businesses and running businesses. She's being successful in women's ministry and such. And then we really felt led to begin to go into the marriage ministry. And to be honest with you, this is funny. I didn't want to do it. I mean, I wanted to work with my wife. Yeah. But the truth is,
marriage ministry.
I'm like, man, I don't know. I mean, business is where my heart is, and people respond, and I like seeing people discover great things about themselves that they're capable of, and living a life that they never expected that they would be able to, and I love that, and the truth is that over time what happened is my heart was just changed, and now we're seeing those same principles that we applied in business, applied in marriages, and it's really transforming them and helping them.
So what's the lesson there for us from that story? What's the lesson?
I think to be willing, first of all, to move and recognize where the momentum is. Now, again, we were both successful in our own right. In me in business, her in
the women's ministry.
But there was another dynamic that we weren't even really paying attention to that had always been there, and that's that we were always doing a certain amount of marriage ministry. We just didn't make it the center of our platform. So because of the natural response from people when we did a couple of marriage events, it just took on its own personality, and so we had to be willing to open our hands to what we were clenching onto.
That's great.
and let go of what was to embrace what is and what will be.
That's great.
And it was absolutely a difficult thing, a difficult process, but we leaned into the process, and it's really been used.
Great. Hear that, guys. Today you got to let go of what you're holding on to embrace the new and to step into the new. What's been your biggest challenge in your leadership journey so far?
Wow. You just want to hit me with all these questions, man, right out of the gates here. And let me see. What's been my biggest leadership challenge? I think there are two things that come to mind when you ask me that question. One is really, really being attentive to my own leadership journey, which dovetails into the next one, which is the old time issue. You know, we've all been given 24 hours in a day. What are we going to do with them? So as a leader, as I've grown and as our influence has increased, there are things that I used to be able to say yes to that it's not good stewardship for me to say yes to anymore. And they're good things, Errol. I mean, they're really good things. But good is the enemy of great. And so it's difficult sometimes to discern the difference between the good and the great, because sometimes the good will present itself before the great. So managing margin, continuing to develop myself so that I'm not just teaching the same things, but I'm continuing to grow and continuing to be able to help people that are following us continue to grow as well because they're following us.
Great.
Is that fair?
Yeah, brilliant. And John, our friend John Maxwell, who we're here with these few days, often says that the secret of your success is hidden in your daily routine. What do the first 90 minutes of your day typically look like, speaking?
I love that question. So admittedly, it takes me a minute to get my bearings in the morning time. Okay, so for one of those listeners out there who hear all these highly successful, high capacity people who are like, oh, I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I'm run a marathon by 9 a.m. or whatever. That's not me. I am usually up at about 7 a.m. and the first thing that I do is I go in and I allow myself about 15 minutes or so just to really wake up. And then the next thing that I do is I read something. I begin to read. I grab a cup of coffee because I got to have a little bit of caffeine. I only drink 2 cups a day, but I got to have those 2 cups, okay? But I drink a couple cups of coffee, and while I'm doing that, I read. Generally, I will read something in Scripture. And then my wife and I will discuss what it is that we feel like that God's speaking to us that day. And what we learned from our time. And we have just some great, robust conversations, and we challenge each other during that time period. And then from there, we begin to formulate a plot on exactly what our priorities are for the day and just revisit that. We generally know what they are, but so it's reading and reflection.
It's good.
And then kind of discussing and documenting, what we learned from that time.
It's good. And John also talks about having high aspirations and low habits.
Right.
So many people have big dreams, big goals, but their habits are not aligned.
Yep.
What other key habits have contributed towards your success?
Well, I think that the first one is something that I mentioned just a minute ago, Errol. I think that a lot of us really fall prey to a trap. It's a very common trap, and that is busyness. And I think it's incredibly important that we manage our margins well. And sometimes we really have to manage for those margins, because many times we find that our value, or we feel like our value, comes from what we're doing. And so we do, and we overcommit. And that doesn't leave room for us just to be and to become. So if there's anything that I would try to, that we have tried to model out, and to be honest with you, there's times that we've modeled it out better than others. There are seasons, but seasons need to be just that. They need to be seasons. They need to change. So if you find yourself, like I have so many times, in an extended season, where I'm just busy, and work and career and or ministry take first priority for too long of a season, then what happens is other pieces of our whole person begins to suffer as a result. And so, I could give all kinds of different success principles, but I think in today's world, when I look at it, I think it is busyness, and busyness robs us of the opportunity, I think, sometimes to really, again, go for what's great rather than what's good.
I want to ask that because I know right now, marriage is the ministry for you guys. There are many people who have gotten married, and they come in with the same high aspirations, but maybe it's low habits or low something. What is it that you think is causing marriages today? I think it's like 60%, is it? Divorce rate right now in the US. What is it that's causing people's marriages not to work out at such a high rate?
Well, again, I appreciate the question, and I think it's. I think there are a few things that contribute. I think that one thing is one of the. Let me frame it up this way. One of the things that we teach our kids, as it applies to finding a mate, because there are very few decisions that we make in our life that are permanent. I mean, really, you can count them on one hand, and your mate should certainly be one of those that fit on one hand. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a permanent decision. Yeah. And so it's incredibly important, but I think sometimes in our angst, while we're single, we want companionship. We were designed for companionship. Yeah. We long for companionship. And so I think sometimes what we do is we settle. And I think sometimes we settle and we don't even realize that we're settling. And so what we train our kids is from the time they're 13, we ask them to begin to create a list of what it is that they're looking for. What are the qualities that they're looking for?
What age are you doing that from?
About 13 is when 13, we start. Wow. Yeah, but it's a living and breathing document. Sure. We tell them, over time, we encourage them to discern what's non-negotiable on that list. They might say blonde hair, blue eyes is on that list, and they might say that there is a person of faith that's on that list. Of those, is there anything that's non-negotiable? Blonde hair, blue eyes might be negotiable. Person of faith may not be negotiable. Sure. And so as they do that, it's hard to hit a target if you don't know where the target's at.
That's right.
So that's the first thing. I think the other thing is that once we're in the relationship, sometimes we come into marriage with a lot of expectations. Yeah. And a lot of ideas about what it's going to be like. And so I would encourage folks that when they go home this evening to be really intentional from this day forth, that instead of looking to be served, because, I work all day, and as I come home, a lot of times I got an idea of what it might need to look like when I walk in the door. Well, the thing is that whether my wife is at home with the kids or whether she's out in the workplace or anything else, she's got her own ideas, and she's had a day, just like me.
Sure.
So one of the things that she and I are both really intentional about is making sure that we prepare to be a good husband or a good wife and a good daddy or a good mommy as we approach the home. We literally take a few minutes to gather ourselves to think about serving rather than expecting to be served.
That's good. And then the answer's fully loaded, right? There's so much in there. I know you spoke earlier about purpose and marriages having a purpose. There's someone listening right now, maybe they're newly married or they're thinking about getting married, or they've been married for a while and they're feeling that their marriage might even be purposeless. And that doesn't resonate with them. How might they discover that purpose in their marriage relationship?
Oh, I appreciate that question. I really appreciate you came back to that. So here's the thing, and whether your listeners share the same faith values that I do is really impertinent, okay? But God is a purposeful God, and He does everything that He does intentionally.
Amen.
And when He put you and your spouse together, when He created you on purpose, for a purpose, a specific purpose. Just like the creator of a stapler didn't create and envision that stapler to be a hammer. it was created for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
An ink pen is created for a specific purpose, and if we ask 1,000 people in a room what the purpose of an ink pen is, they'd be able to tell us immediately. But it's interesting when we think about ourselves and what our purpose is, it's a more difficult question. When we think about our marriage, it's a more difficult question. And that somewhat stands to reason, but when we examine our talents and our passions and the things that we're good at and what our life journey has been and what it has meant, when we look for common ground, common interest.
In a practical sense, though, is it about those that husband, that wife, that couple sitting down, actually doing some kind of talent analysis, mapping out stuff? Like,
well,
how would they do it?
So there again, I appreciate the question. So here's what I would say. It is a process, and there's no way in the time to honor your time and the listener's time that we could go through that process on this interview. However, Julie and I do have a book that is called Two Are Better Than One. God has a purpose for your marriage. So two are better than one. So again, whether they share our faith or not is irrelevant, although we'd love it if they did. But it is a fun book that is divided in two different sections. The first half really builds the case to help us understand that, in fact, there is a purpose for our marriage. And bring about evidence for that. And then the second half is a purpose that begins to set them on a journey to discover that purpose.
That's great. Brilliant. It's really practical. Almost done here now, right? But what's the one thing you're most fired up about right now?
I'll tell you what I'm fired up about. I'm fired up about changing those statistics, and I mean that. The statistics of divorce, marriage is the truth is it can be really difficult. But I'm also going to tell you it can be incredibly rewarding as well. And what I'm excited about is that as Julie and I travel the country and the world and we speak and we address these audiences, we're seeing the light bulb come on for people. And I just want to give your listeners one little tidbit, okay? Do I have just a couple of minutes for that? As you're thinking about and leaning into and processing this idea of purpose, what we do in marriage all too often is we focus on, we have a problem, we need to fix it. And so there's issues that we need to address, right? And if every thought leader throughout time has been correct, because they all agree on one thing for certain, and that's we become what we think about. We find what we're looking for. King Solomon said, as we think in our hearts, so we are, or so we become. So if all those things are true, then it's really important for us to think about what it is we're thinking about. So instead of, we can say, let's fix the problem, let's address the problem. But when we do that, what happens is we're feeding all of the subject matter is going to the problem, right? Whereas if we ask ourselves a different question, that question is simply this: what is the desired result? When we come up against an issue, whether it's a financial issue, a parenting issue, whatever it is, we don't spend any time in the issue, okay? We ask, what is the desired result? Now, the issue gets addressed, but a whole lot of other things get addressed in that conversation that wouldn't have been addressed if we just kept all of our focus. Plus, we're moving in the direction of where we want to go, which is the desired result.
Brilliant.
Fair?
Awesome. Yeah, brilliant. Hey, Greg, how do we find out more about you? Tell us, like, your social media handles, your website address, all that kind of stuff, your books. Let us know.
Absolutely. Well, our books are pretty well anywhere that books are sold. Usually Amazon has about the best deal you can get. You know what I mean? They're highly competitive, so we're definitely available. And you could just type in Greg and Julie Gorman on Amazon, and you'd find the list of books that we've written. We've just recently come out with a new devotional that's called Married for a Purpose. It's 52 devotionals for couples. It's designed for the busy couple, just to be able to come together just one time and share some intimate time together. And then we give them a thought assignment for the week that will help reshape their thinking over the course of a year, which will, as we know, change their results as well. So that's also the name of our Facebook page. So our public page is Married for a Purpose on Facebook. And then, of course, our website is marriedforapurpose.com, or you can find us at gormanleadership.com.
Fantastic. Greg, it's been absolutely phenomenal sharing with you guys. I encourage you If you're single, if you're dating, if you're married, you're thinking about you're bringing some more life, fruit, purpose to your relationships. Go and check out the website. Go and check out the books. Be blessed, be nourished, be edified. And why not bless somebody else with the book as well? You know what might also benefit from some of this teaching. And of course, share the podcast with someone else you think needs to hear this right now. All right, Greg, thank you so much, man.
Oh man, what a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol@errollawson.com. Or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around the leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away. We'll get you booked in. It's Errol@errollawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes, give us a nice review, that would be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.